Alright, the Pullman DC electric gear. Voltage regulator 17LH2K22, cat numbers KE13470. This panel illustrated in figure 45 contains field resistor control, resistor regulator, adjusting rheostat, stabilizing rheostat, establishing stabilizing resistor, detuning resistor, stabilizing capacitor, fixed coil, almost coil, series coil, current limiting coil, wedge type contact bar and finger contacts. Relay panels used to regulate with the generated voltage with a selected value, except that is effective with excessive current loading when charging with an empty battery. The voltage setting is adjustable for proper charge with the constant potential method of either lead or Edison batteries. Current limiting series, current limiting settings are automatically reduced. The value of the load shedding relay with a C or PR struck by approaching to match the capacity of the AC motor. Fixed coil is mounted with a central stationary core with a magnetic structure. See figure 46 series. Coil shunt coil are on the right, contactor bar on end. Contacting limiting coil is on the left. The both coil assemblies and they're held with a circular air gap supporting left springs. External adjustable tension springs hold with the coil assembly outward position with all contacts closed. Current limiting coil with the X on contact mechanism supporting leaf springs with the roller against the unstrap. The shunt coil with the circuit thoroughly with a control rheostat with a control resistor shunt coil is connected with the parallel with a fixed coil. See figure 47. The current circuit is proportional with the generator voltage. The series coil is connected with the shear of the generator front field with is wound with the same spool with a shunt coil winding polarity is opposite with the shunt coil is usually the opposite. Used to compensate with the pressure of the contact fingers, resting on the contact bars of the regulator operator. With the force produced with the winding opening with the force of the shunt coil with the currents high or low speed, low speed and low high speed. Force produced with the winding varies corresponding with thus is able to compensate with the variable number of the contact fingers that are closed. Current limiting coil with the connected with the parallel with load shedding receive with the current proportional with the load current with the U strap with the further away from the current limiting rollers at high speed requires more limiting amperes connected with the voltage setting that is current limiting limited. Thus the spool is mainly determined by gradient with the current limiting calibrating spring percentage change with the design occasional slope with varied current limiting is cut in percent slope assembly essentially independent of the voltage setting. A slight drop of the voltage from no load cut in point will occur. Dropping is about 1.5%. For the lower current limiting setting required for the operating of the standby power, only one section of the load shunt is connected. The contact bar is a wedge shape between 1/8 of an inch thin on the front and the end of the bar is stamped with the front and the back with a travel the opposite. All contacts are closed with the opening at 3/16 of an inch. Contacts hinge type of the stationary contact fingers mounted with the groups of 10 insulated finger block are unseparated from each other on by its shield. See figure 45 on the location panel. 40 wiring. The wire should be used with the number 16 flammable asbestos flame resistant insulation operation generator voltage built up with the fixed coil with the shunt coil energized with the creating of the motor action magnetic attraction to the pull. The shunt series coil assembly unwired against the pull of the voltage calibrating spring. Simply the contact bar directly coupled with this coil assembly of the pole with the left opens with the contact inner resistance for the generator field with a further increase of the generator speed with the voltage. More contacts open, more resistance is added field and contact. In order to maintain voltage setting, the amount of the resistance required with the fall between the pair of contacts, the contact mechanism will vibrate between the contacts to hold the average voltage setting. To add stability with the shunt coil is coupled with the generator with the shunt field through the stabilizing resistor stabilizing rheostat contained in series with the capacitor for the detuning the resistor connected to the series of the shunt coil and the number 6 contact. The arrangement of the resistance with the compensate inductive current setup with the field of the trigger of the contact bar moves, breaking the contact resistance of the stabilizing circuit control of the voltage constant volt value of the normal range and generator speed. There is also a magnetic plug that faces the shunt with a series of a coil assembly which serves the trimmer to obtain the voltage with a high speed with the manual. This is manually setting, leave the 2 threads visible on the plug. When the generator comes into current regulation, any increase of the is generated with the current above the setting with the current limited coil with the coil with a smooth inward on both the current limiting spring and the voltage spring that through the pressure on the U-strap. This opens with a more contact, reducing the voltage setting proportional except for the current loading with approximate constant kW kilowatt kW loading is maintained. Checking the regulator yard test. Before attempting to make an adjustment with the regulator setting, all cleaning and mechanical repairs must be made with the contact seat adjusted in accordance with the instructions shown on the contact details. See Figure 48, uncircle the rheostat with the resistor within the coil to check with the contact gap of the wipe and travel. Figure 47 for the regular voltage setting increase with approximately 2 volts when covered and removed, therefore checking the final setting with the cover in place. In time silver alloy contact material on the bar and the finger with the transfer of the finger to the bar with the vice versa, which will normally sequence few light strokes of oil of clean fine file should remove projections. It is not necessary to remove all small craters. Do not use sandpaper, emery cloth, or accessories with all the contacts. Open the mechanism again for the stop. The brake on the two back contacts should be 1/32 of an inch with the mechanism normally enclosed position with the wipes off the front. The contact should be 1/32 of an inch. Adjust the support with the string and studs of the finger blackout obtained. Do not shim the contact bar with the bend fingers. When it becomes necessary to remove the contact of the bar is complete with a new assembly with the finger of the bar will be installed with the old contacts will be returned to the shop with the matching with the contact fingers are interchangeable. Be sure to know that the order of the assembly of the shield, finger, and terminal and lock washer screw incorrectly. Assembly will throw the fingers out of line. Fingers should then be free of action. Operating mechanism band. By operating mechanism by hand, observe the fingers on each side of the block with the contact of the bar in the sequence. Note also each pair of the fingers contact bar approximately the same time. It is important to remember the contact varies for the thickness will upset the sequence of the contact with the touching of the new bar. Therefore, all fingers contact with one regulator should be exchanged in sets of 20. Check performance with the equipment operating from the standby power. Since all the settings of the checkings must be made with the operating temperature, allow the 20 minutes of the warm-up period. For routine check, remove generator lead and tripping overload relay with the contact of the DC voltage to the G and F terminals. Note reading of the meter with the voltage adjusting rheostat correcting setting by turning the knob. If necessary, do not tamper with the voltage calibrating spring. Remove the standby cable and note the voltage reading of the generator and decrease the voltage. Should it not exceed the setting of the voltage adjusting the rheostat drop more than 5 volts. Adjusting stabilizing rheostat to correct if the adjusting either of the rheostat does not have an effect with the meter readings of the major requirement. Pairs are required and regulators should be exchanged. Current regulation. Check for the clearance between the U-strap of the rollers on the current coil assembly. This should be at 1,000 to 5,000. So the generator should not operate. All contacts normally closed. Install the DC ammeter and shunt and ammeter with the G1 lead on the relay panel. Reset overload relay and load. If necessary, discharge battery and beforehand of the current regulation. See data chart page 56 on the values. Adjust coil tension spring as required. This spring is stiff and a small adjustment will be make great changes that do not exceed the original factory marked setting, cutting the calibrating plate in figure 45. A rough check of the current regulation setting can be made by merely pushing on the U-strap by hand to raise the generator load. At the same time, watch the action of the current limiting coil assembly. Ordinarily, currently setting on the correct of the stand operation will also be correct for the road operation 5C relay. Closes for the interlocking contacts of the AR relay. Show the fixed resistors, your control resistor, your voltage adjustment, rheostat, stabilizing resistor, detuning resistor, stabilizing capacitator. Then below your current limiting calibrating spring, the calibration plate, the current limiting coil, fixed coil, voltage calibrating springs, stationary contact fingers, movable contact bars, and finger block. Alright, show the brass support plate, the bar, the central core, bar, pole base, rings, and the middle space for fixed coil. Reset for the compression spring, core head, current limiting coil air gap, core head, and floating coil air gap. Alright, show the generator shunt field. Resistors are swiggly lines. A breaker, battery to generator, capacitors, double line parallel. Switch to the SP and the resistors. Shunt field, field resistor stabilizer capacitor, compound, rheostat. Rectifier with a diode, the triangle and the spare. Voltage control rheostat with all its brakes, and then the generator for pilot lamp, compressor lamp, panel component motor or compressor motor. Alright, this shows your contact fingers with the contact bar support, floating coil, part A, movable member, stationary member, screw, lock, washer, terminal, shield, wire, finger block, pole, pieces, ring, flathead, attaching screwdriver, finger block, supporting stud, unlock, adjusting, open and end wrench inserted between wires. And then it shows the removing of these contact fingers, excess of the finger 1 through 10, breaks of 5/32 of an inch break, or 156 thousandths plus or minus 6 thousandths of an inch. Approximately 1/32 of an inch wear allowance on the contacts with the coil with the out position, and 1/32 of an inch break. Alright, coil replacement. Divide the remove of the regulator of the bench, remove of the right over the land over the shunt coil, with the remove of the contact bar with the from its support with the movable finger block for the complete with the finger block with may be allowed with the swing sideboard with the assessed with the covered wire. Move the front support with the spring steel fingers complete with the note with the two such fingers that are used at this point. Use a pen knife to lift the fingers out over the slide action for the triangular finger for the base for the figure 49. Move the attaching screw with the hardware inside and with the rear with the supporting fingers, lifting the fingers out of the slot with the triangular finger base. Use care not to damage the fingers. Remove the U-strap at the end of the spring rod. Remove the two cap screws from the attached front over the brass plates for the back of the pole piece ring. The complete floating cell with together with its spring with the pole piece with the ring can be removed with the relay from the relay by taking out with the two cap screws which attach the ring to the rectangular bars. It may be necessary to knock out the ring free with a rawhide mallet. The floating cell spring with the spring support with the spring rods can be removed with the coil with the pole piece ring. Coil can then be taken out with the ring note with the L, the insulated connection with the made with the terminals and shown with the solar side end with the coil windings that should be unsoldered and used again with the replacement coil. Remove the fixed coil with the shunt coil that should be first to be removed with the described above. Smooth the coil with the core head, then we remove the taking out with the 1032 with the Phillips screw with the head and screw with the within the attached core head with the central core head with the attached brass plate will then come out with this unit after the fixed cell with the remove the and replace the fixed coil with the note, especially with the location of the fore end. Right, radially refer to the assembled relay for the correct position. Note that a bent out tab is used with the location purses. This fits into the corresponding slot in one of the brass plates. Current limiting coil is removed in the same manner with the moving coil. It is not necessary to remove the roller arms. Note that the flexor coupler shunts are soldered at both ends of the insulate with the continuity of the circuit. After the removal of the replacement of any of the coil relay with the carefully completed with the cell and set it and tested. Alright, setting, voltage calibration, spring voltage NC figure 45, voltage calibration, spring seeing with the primary adjustment, add to determine the heating level of the regulator, setting of the more properly made with the factory, in the case of the replacement and the necessitation removal of these springs. These settings are carefully reestablished. Any change of the settings will require complete retesting of the regulator. Current limiting cutting end point is changed by increasing and decreasing the current limiting of the coil spring and the tension. No case should be the setting with it be increased above the values. Alright, voltage adjustment rheostat. The rheostat is provided for the purpose of setting the voltage as a value above and below the nominal service dictates, or for changing lead to Edison batteries. Adjustment should be made with a high speed, accurately calibrated as meter. Very careful the regulator is not current limitation over lead relay trip. Stabilizing rheostat. The rheostat is provided to screw with a flat voltage curve of the regulator should be adjusted to give the desired voltage to allow low speed. At a low speed, figure 4 or 5 for adjustment near the top of the speed. See paragraph magnetic adjusting plug under operation. Testing, which completely assemble the voltage control relay file with the testing should be made. Check the circuit of the resistor coil per connection diagram. Check the solder connection. Check with set with the contact gap of the wipe of the travel per figure 48. All contacts may be checked with the proper sequence. Absolutely essential for each of the pair of the contacts open before either contact with the next pair opens. Make the following mechanical check with the contact with the fingers, friction binding to the check with the freedom of the motion with each of the finger, buckling with the moving coil support springs. All wiring should be clear of the moving parts, adequately supported, and must be tied at the frequent interval with the check with the cover fitting with the clearing of the electrically live parts. Check with the amps and the fiction over the contact bar with the show with the shunt with the both mechanisms on the cover. Be sure coilings are sewn with the ends of the rings approximately 1/16 of an inch gap all around, all between the ring and the shield of the moving coil and the disc. Adjust the current level limit of the U-strap. The clear of the current limiting of the coil rollers between 1,000 and 5,000 of an inch will allow the moving elements of the de-energized position. Monitor the relay in the same position as the cover of the panel must be plumb level. The connect with the up the surface of the core for the figure 50. Use GMG 150 type generator for which relay was designed line in the ammeter with live and volt in the field ammeter and float or shunt winding adjust field circuit resistance equal pressure getting field ohms. Set voltage adjustment rheostat high end of the range. 7. Operate near top speed next to the last pair of the contracts operating and adjust for the contacts operating. Adjust the voltage calibrating spring regulate with the voltage given in with the item 5 of the data sheet with the obtainment of the correct voltage setting of amplitude given in the item 6 of the data sheet. Flowing the floating shunt cell is important with the current not exceeded in the current floating shunt cell. The two have adjusted regulator voltage calibrating spring to adjust the slider tab control resistor in series with the floating shunt coil. When adjusting voltage calibrating spring, maintain the equal spring length edge making within the spring setting with the top speed if they do not change. Make all subsequent voltage adjustment if necessary with the voltage adjusting rheostat. 8. Readjust the rheostat with a give it the proper charging voltage, which will still operate with a higher speed run with a heating up to a period of 15 to 20 minutes with this voltage. Recheck the setting. Meaning the paragraph 7 to be sure that the moving the shunt winding current is shown within plus or minus 10% of the correct values. Operate the entire speed range, rising, falling speed. Check the voltage plus or minus 3% of the nominal. Further adjustment may be made with the magnetic adjusting plug and is required with a high speed. 11. The operating nominal vent. Operating nominal volts and high speed. Set current limited to the cut-in adjustment current with limiting spring. This check may be best made with an individual panel, but may be made with a merely passing appropriate current with the current limiting coil. 12. Make final cover in the place of all adjustments. Live voltage may be 1 or 2 lower with the cover in place, but the final adjustment voltage should be made with the means of the voltage adjusting the rheostat. Do not tamper with the calibrating springs when they were once been adjusted for the proper shunt coil current. As increase will cause the relay to overheat. Be sure all voltage adjustments are made while relay is not in current limit. 13. Make tests to cover the ground with using Megger. 14. Apply with a car. Regulator must be readjusted. Outline with the checking the regulator yard test. Alright, axle driven voltage check. After the warm up here with the nominal voltage, seeing the no loaded conditions with line contactor G with a rising and falling generator speed. Shift the compound means with the stabilizing rheostat, turning to the counterclockwise to rate of the voltage, low speed, adjusting high speed voltage by means of voltage adjusting rheostat, turning counterclockwise, increase the voltage. Alright, your axle driven current limit check. To obtain the current limit section allowed with the line contactor G to close, obtain load. Note the load shunt relay C is closed with the road operation current at which the current limit obtained would vary considerably. Generator speed refer to the character of the curve of the road operation figure 51. Some of the current limiting cut-in points vary in the divide with the make of the check for the high generator speed is possible. The necessary adjustment means current limiting spring. If the spring is quite stiff and small adjustment will make a large change. Alright, your data sheets, voltage control relay type with relay motor generator set type, shunt resistors and resistor cold and hot. 9.87 ohms, 8.29 ohms, regulator current range 7.30 plus 452 amps. Nominal voltage setting, regulator 75 plus or minus 3%. Maximum voltage setting of the regulator 88 plus or minus 3%. Float shunt coil amperage 1.0 or plus or minus 10%. Voltage rating adjustment current control rheostat 78 to 74 volts. Currently limiting field ampere 0.8 amps. Bench test. Current limiting cutout amper for the field amper for the item 8, 46 amper the plus or minus 5%. Voltage reduction under current limited 55.2 amperes with a cool amper 63.7 volts at plus or minus 2%. Current limiting circuit resistance 0.00658 ohms. Bench tax axle driven with panel. Current limit cutout load amperes 3,780 RPMs or 330 amps plus or minus 5%. Voltage regulator reduction limiting it at 465 amperes with load amper to 3,780 RPM, 63.7 volts plus or minus 2%. Current limiting cutting load amper to 690 RPM to 286 amps plus or minus 10%. Voltage reduction under the current limiting of 372 amps plus or minus 5%. Loading amps of 690 RPM, 63.7 volts plus or minus 2%. Standby AC drive with panel. Current limiting cut in 1750 RPM. Motor driven to 198 amps plus or minus 7%. This voltage reduction under current limiting of 253 amps plus or minus 7%. No load operating voltage. Battery charging 76 volts. Alright, then we can move on to the your voltage control regulator. Shows the stationary contact blocks with contact fingers and moving contact bar support. Pole piece magnetic frame, floating coil, adjustable support screw with a stationary contact back and support. Shows the pole piece core head and core head, magnetic frame side fixed field coil, calibrating plate, supporting plate for the car core. Roller lever, bracket supporting fingers over here, and then roller and compensating current limiting. Our driven motor goes to generator, field amp lines, amp meter, amp motor, resistors. I don't know what's the resistor, rheostat, float shunt amp, line volts, test configuration to load, and shows a curve here. The voltage ampere characteristics of 75 volt control tolerance generator. Curve A, B, C, and D. Alright, generator control panel. The panel is illustrated in figure 52, contained with a reverse current relay and has the contactor G overlaid relay OLR auxiliary relay AR, one section. Two sections load shunt 54 and 5A and 5B load short relay C field fuse. Controls remain with the dual operation. The car axle consists of automatic clutch drive. Well, the car is in motion from the built-in motor, which connects with a 220 volt 60 cycle phase standby motor. Armature reversing RS make correct armature for the connections for forward and reverse direction during initial generator rotation. Following automatic clutch engagement, and the generator helps in the terminal voltage self-excited machine. When generator voltage slightly exceeds the battery reverse current with the relay RC operate for the close of the line contactor G connects the generator to the battery field and load circuit. With further increase, the generator takes over the whatever load was connected to the system, beginning with the return battery to the power to the battery. From this point, the generator's control is assumed the voltage control relay is 17L2H2K22. Constant voltage is held through the normal generation speed range except with its follows. Should the generator load tend to exceed the current limited value of the relay voltage setting, the automatically reduce the proportion of excess current loading so that the approximate concept of the KW loading is maintained with the current limiting ride with the car speed increase to take advantage of the increase of the generator rating with the higher generator speeds. Further illustration, current limiting characteristics C, the curve 51. Load shunt relay C with the pickup of the during axle driven operation plus with the two section of the load shunt. SA and SP with the parallel given the axle driven the current limiting range. When the generator speed decreases below the voltage control relay range, the resulting decrease of the generator voltage coupled with the reverse of the current flow between battery and generator, the RC relay drops out and opens line contactor G. Your standby power AC motor drive with 220 volt 60 cycle 3-phase AC powered plugged in AC line contacts the closed starting motor and bringing it to set up the normal speed within a few seconds. As in cold start with the reversing switch, the RS operates to make sure the correct armature connection direction of the rotation. Interlocking auxiliary relay AR prevents the operation of the relay C with leaving the only load a shunt of the selection of the SA current. Give the reducing current limited with the motor driven in operation shown in the curve figure and by curve figure in figure 51. When generated voltage slightly exceeds the battery voltage of the relay, RC closes by line contactor G. Prevented with the closing until the line relay LR operates with a time interval approximately 3 seconds, allowing the motor generator to come up with a normal operating speed without load operation of the LR. With the close of the contactor G, operation continues the road surface except the relay 17LH2 with the K22 limits with the generator loading the capacity of the AC motor. The limitation prevent with the reverse current relay with it being made with a sensitivity through the buck out motoring light current with the motor generator set. So if this condition prevails, the set with unplugged with a standard power auxiliary relay AR is provided with a hold contactor G. Open until generator voltage has reduced to such a low value that the motor cannot occur. One example, the drive of the AR is not energized with the following allowing the circuits to function normally with reverse current. Relay buckets in proper setting because the automatic clutch does not disengage until the set is below motoring speed. Alright, reverse current relay RC, the control operating line contactor G. This relay is the E-shaped magnetic structure with having 3 cores with a common base. The top core carries the shunt and potential for the core over the RCP, with the battery at bottom carries the differential over the RCD. Function of the reverse current relay is prevent the generator from having to connect with the batteries unless the generated voltage is above the battery. Figure 33 show the details. Figure 33 show the type 17 FM 49 panel. Then we have figure 53 with reverse current relay RC type 17 LC 19A armature shunt coil RCP stop adjustable dropout adjustable spring pickup series coil RCS differential coil RCD moving contact adjusting stationary contact. Alright, for the generator voltage left of the battery voltage, the magnetic flow of the armature with the coil with the RCD, RCP with the data with the holding armature with the open with the contact position. Generator voltage equal to the battery voltage from the coil with the RCD with the break home with the 0 with the reverse of the further increase with the voltage of the battery voltage flux of the armature foot. Shift the pulling of the armature into the closed contact position with the differential maximum at minimum battery voltage with the G. Close the generator load current with the RCS is creates a flux hole with the armature with the closed position. Reverse current of the battery to the generator flux for the RCS differential with the flux for the RCP. Dropping out of the armature with the flux direction. See figure 54. Current reversing current relay yard. The generator operating from standby power, reducing the generator voltage minimum of the manual operation voltage regulator. Gradually release the bring of the voltage slowly. Alright, your pickups, see figure 53, the relay shell set by changing the adjustment of the armature, adjusting spring to close with the generator, exceed with the battery voltage. The number of the volts shown with the dash sheet with the higher battery potential for the differential will be left and should never be less than 1 volt above the battery. Drop out. See figure 53. Adjustment to stop with the screws should be checked with the be sure with the magnetic. There's a flask in which the black of the face for the armature for the necessary to check with the reverse current into the adjustment will automatically set in. Check relay shop. After the relays have been repaired, followed with a major test, there should be made in accordance with some of the and to save time on the final adjustment for the cars with the motor generator regulator relay, which must be operate. Apply the current RCD coil with the negative direction dash sheet with the current active positive the right hand terminal number 1 marked generator. 2. Apply the current RCP coil with the positive direction set the dash sheet with the current active positive to the right hand terminal number 1K part T1. Decrease the RCD current with a 0 with the reverse. The armature should be closed with the RCD current within the increase that it says to show that the dash sheet is in pi with the direction adjusting the armature with the adjustment spring with the obtain. 4 set with the screw finish with the back face for the armature. Note with the coils over the coil RCP and RCD with the dismount front after removal of the armature for the RCF. The DM mounted Mounted, removal of the relay from the panel acts at the middle of the cord attachment. A final adjustment must be made by the car report with the RTF after the installation of line contactor connectors, motor generator to battery. Also, certain normally closed with the two normally open interlock with the function of the line contactor. Under control reverse current relay contactors should pick up with about a zero. I believe that's 8.262 amp at approximately 40 volts, 77 degrees Fahrenheit, adjusting armature spring tension of the turning of the adjusting screw of the obtainment of the contact pressure adjustment is not adjustable. It's maintained by the wiping tension of the spring with a 10 to 13 pounds. Check with the pressure of the thin piece of the paper between the contact with the wiper loop attached to the end of the shunt next to the available contact tip onto the head of the screw with the width of the cave with about 20% less pressure than specified. After the spring cowl, push with the perpendicular until the paper head can be removed easily. If less than 10 pounds was required, exchange with the wiping spring. See figures 56. Working with this check will be sure that the contact fully closed with the overlaid relay has been trimmed. The gap between the contact tips are now new should be 1/1332 of an inch or 1632 of an inch. These contacts should be renewed with the burn one half of the wind clearance between the contacts of 3/4 of an inch. See 3/4 of an inch. The gap should be the old tips made greater than shown. The amount of the wear and tip, the cause of the worn tip, lever, and the bent armature stopping. Show the before pickup of the generator, battery, shunt series, and differential. Show the shunt flex, differential flex, and series flex. Alright, shunt series differential. Polarity just before pickup of the generator. Pickup just before pickup of the generator battery. After pickup of the generator battery. Just before drop out of the generator. Less than the battery. After drop out, generator less than the battery. Alright, shows your air chute spacer, steel pole, disc, stationary contact tip, moving contact tip, air horn, flexible shunt, operating coil, wiping spring, non-adjustable armature, spring adjustable, adjusting screw, thin paper wider than the tips, wire stripped for the match for the clear arch support string, pull perpendicular line with the contact until the paper can be easily removed. The armature fully closed as shown. Or renew a specified plate on the arc chute burn one half through the using old space for the new tubular rivet. The function of the two circle the interlock with the left hand outside of the interlock normally open the control of the low voltage relay on the compressor for the motor panel. Left hand inside the interlock normally open the control of the generator on the pilot light. Right hand outside the interlock the normal close of the bridge of the large portion of the resistance shield coil reverse current relay until the line contactor closes. The right hand inside contact normally closed operated with the compressor motor field with a circle of air too. Interlockers are just with the thread stub with the stationary contact sheet with the washer for the right hand U shape with the stationary bracket breaker 17/16 of an inch, 1/2 inch wear allowance, 3/32 of an inch to 1/64 of an inch. See figure 57. Or your line relay LR connected with the distributor of the M3 leads for the AC start switch for the AC motor. The initial flow current of the motor is heavy since the relay is sincere with one of the motor leave the flow of the current is heavy, creating with a strong magnetic field with the lifts. Relay contact plunger operating opening when the contact with the motor comes up with the speed of the current flow through the coil dioxide. The degree of the relays drops out, completing circuit to coil G contactor. Overload relay current. Contact opens with the circuit with the line connector G with the event with a motor generator that becomes overload. The G figure 58 with a coil with the overload relay is connected in series with the generator and the manual set reset and mechanical latch holds. Contact open once to the trip that must be reset with lifting latch. The relay is factory set at 650 amps. The setting should be maintained with plus or minus 5%. Auxiliary relay air with the circuit of the coil with the auxiliary relay is through the interlocking AC start switch operated with only the 220 volt AC start switch is closed. Normally closed with the contact opening circuits with the Z relay coil with the help connected energized with its own contacts refer. After AC start switch with the dropped out maintain circuit until after the reverse current relay has operated. Load shunts SA and SB, the contact pipe of the generator line with the create voltage drop potential proportional load current to operation current, limiting generator regulator panel. Two-section load shunt is dual setting with the generator loading the small section of the bottom of the permanently cycle Insert a limited generator output with operating on the standby large section at the top of the connect with the parallel closure of the C relay operating in the car axle drive. Load shunt relay C with the operating with the generator voltage connect with the both portions of the load shunt with the shunt with the pump parallel with the road operation held with the interlock auxiliary relay operating standby preventing overload alternating current motors. Relay should be picked up within 112 thousandths of spring inch tension, about 40 volts. The contact pressure should also be 2 to 3 pounds re-wiping spring with a maintained pressure. The contact breaks at approximately 3/8 of an inch. Contact wear allowance of 1/8 of an inch. Load shunt and C relay are shown figure 59. Field fuses, C fuse chart with page 166. U with its negative field circuit, but they also protect with the coil regulators. G relay, the RCP and AR and C relay do not flush the fuse or reverse field as may result. Alright, alternating current starter switch. Then clapper on top of the 25 horsepower, 2220 volt 3-phase 60 cycle switch for the AC operating coil connect with the alternating current standby power to the motor normally shown with the right hand interlock to prevent the energizing C relay. Normally closed with the left hand interlocks to open prevent line contactor G to close until the alternating motor has come to the full speed. There's normal operate open interlocking which holds start, which close with the after being energized start stop button, but then normally overload the trip starting with a switch which alternating current is excessive. The heaters are rated with 97 amperes with 104 degrees Fahrenheit. Check to see overload of the trips and reinstalling heaters. I show the contact bar, stationary contact adjustment with the moving contacts with a spring, movable contact with a spring, the guide post and finger block, latch, series coil, adjustable screws and nuts, armature interlockings. Note when using adjusting screw for the trim and some of the clearance should be always maintained between the armature and the frame. I show stationary contact load shunt A and B at load shunt A and load shunt B, ground plus, moving contact bridge type stationary contact, wipe spring non-adjustable operating coil, armature spring lock nut adjusting screw. Alright, mechanical adjustments should be made with the loose of the switch with a drop that open position, de-energize the contact phase for the dress with the fine valve with the lead for the form out on the surface. Determine the condition of the contact block with the contact clove with applying force for the magnet with the limitation with the knot of support with the bracket of the measurement of the eye gap between the movable the trip and the trip support where the gap less is 1/16 of an inch less or a type should be removed. Right, you're renewing station tips. Move the arc show with a sliding with the upward off of the projection with the over the station with the tipping, arcing, or horn. Move the screw for the movable, the tip arc of the horns next to the loose armature for the top screw sufficiently with the two all the valve. Armature for the open beyond when the armature stop. The slide of the stationary tip of the may be removed with the loosened screw with the drawing with them forward. It is not necessary to remove the series complete with the renew movable tips. Insert a screwdriver at the top of the spring. Slide with the spring upward out of the holder. Screw with the holding tip of the shunt with exposed with the removable. Place the spring. Slide with the removable tip. The force where it's placed. The end of the spring over the screw. Slide both spring and tip backward into place after reassembling the arcing horn with the gap at the end of the horn. Stationary tip shown in 1/2 inch and plus or minus 1/32 of an inch. Renew interlocking tip. The interlocking should be removed with the contactor base with the replacement interlocking tip. The remove of the interlocking screws. Permit complete disassembly of the interlocking unit. Reassembly non-operating interlock. Assemble the parts of the operating rod. Place the entire assembly on the molded base with the longer portion of the operating rod toward the contactor. Replace with the interlocker screw. Check to see the operating rod moved without binding. Reassembly normal closed interlock. Assemble the parts on the operating rod. Complete the reassembly in the manner described with the normal open interlock. Noise, reduce noise, and starter with smooth and clean contact surface laminated and damage from the core. Alright, you're testing overload relay. Remove the generator plug for the load from the control panel with the inch of the shunt, whether the millivolt meter with its re-ratings will be dependent on the overload relay settings. See figure 529A with the connection diagram. Remove the field fuse for the safety purposes. 3. Remove the positive field wire from the S plus terminal on the relay, complete with the generator armature circuit with the removing the positive, B positive and battery positive and negative cables from the battery connecting together with the short circuit of the generator switches armature. 5. Separate excite with the field's mean voltage 3 to 8 volts to obtain with a flashlight battery cell from the car. Battery connected with a shield from a shunt field with adjustable rheostat series with resistor 240 ohms. The excessive air required will be very low and will depend upon the type of equipment in which method is applied. Polarity connection field excitation voltage will depend on the generator residual. Some of the residual may be sufficient to cause the generator to build up past relay current. Trip current it would have then bucked down and changed the either the field voltage connection to obtain. Proposed residual direction of the rotation of the generator residual may be checked by starting the motor. Generator set by the generator field opening with the noting the millivolt reading at the G close. R6 connector stand power with the start the AC. 7 after motor generator is running. 2 with the generator contact pushing the armature with a strong stick. 8 means of the variable resistance A all in starting shutting field circuit is slow with the increase of taking the resistance out of the field generator start. Armature current 1 until the overload relay trips. Record reading over the time of the trip. Increase the relay setting with increase the calibrating spring tension. Repeat 8 times until the relay trips are desired result desired current. Alright, so the battery adjustable square. I don't know what their square might. I've seen squares, but I guess we'll just say it's the throttle. Shunt field the generator with capacitor, shunt millivolt meter, and then some open relay schematic for overloaded relay. And this was your Pullman DC electric rear PDF testing.